oscillates across a plate, okay, and that generates friction. Now, the only lubricant involved in this process is actually the gasoline. Now, gasoline, I'll let you in on a little secret, generally isn't a very good lubricant. So when you do that oscillating backwards and forwards across the plate, you get a massive wear scratch across the ball. I'm going to show you a photo of that. So on the right-hand side of this slide, up on the top corner, you can see a photo under a microscope of what happens to the ball with normal gasoline. If you like, this is our previous formulation of Techron. You get very, very big wear scratches because the fuel is not very good at protecting those moving parts as they slide across each other. The bottom photo on the right-hand side is what happens when you include clean and glide technology into that gasoline. So what it does is it seeps out and protects those metal surfaces, and it acts as a cushion between the sliding metal surfaces. It reduces friction and it reduces wear. So that is the proof point that these molecules that are now in clean and glide are there to protect your engine, reduce friction, and improve efficiency. So there is an instantaneous effect as soon as this fuel goes into your engine. It can now get to those hard to lubricate places, particularly around the upper part of the piston, and create a benefit. That's instantaneous. But there is a second long-term benefit that comes because there is a phenomenon known as blow-by. So some of the fuel that's in that combustion process will actually blow by the rings and gets down into the lubricant. So if I go and have a look at the oil when it's changed after, let's say, 10,000 kilometers, what I find is about 1% of that oil is actually fuel additive. So it was Techron, which was great because the Techron had no nasty side effects in that crankcase. But from today, when you look in that used oil, you will find clean and glide molecules that now get circulated right throughout the heart of the engine, and they now have the ability to protect everywhere. So there's two effects. There's the instantaneous effect as soon as you fill up, but more importantly, there is the long-term effect that comes from continual use of clean and glide. So I've got a bit of a schematic here. So the interesting thing about the lubricants is if you buy a high-quality lubricant like Caltex's Havalon, it has very high levels of friction modifiers in that lubricant. Some other lower quality ones may have no friction modifier at all. But the thing about the friction modifier is it sacrifices itself to protect those sliding metal surfaces. So it's continually consumed during the course of that oil drain interval. So on the day the oil is new, that's the best it's ever going to be. Until now, where with continual use of Caltex with Techron, we can replenish the friction modifiers that are consumed in your lubricant. So what we can do is we can help to protect your precious investment for the whole time that oil is in the car. Now you might say, well, does that mean that I don't have to change my oil? No, that's definitely not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is we can help to make it better during the course of its life. Okay, you still need to change the oil at the recommended oil change interval. So what you see is that when day one, you have your friction modifier at its maximum, it starts to get used up over the course of, let's say, the next 6 months. By using Caltex with Techron, we can start to put that back in, and we can maintain a fairly consistent effect. So that goes to show that you can help to maintain the friction reducing properties by continual use of Caltex with Techron. So that was some of the tests that we did in the laboratory. This next one is a lubricants test called the Sequence 6. So this is actually in an engine that is on a bench. It's in a test cell. So what happens in this case is we take the engine, which is a General Motors engine, and we have a lubricant in there that doesn't contain a friction modifier. In this case, it's an SAE 5W30. And what we do is we measure two things. We measure fuel consumption, which is the y-axis here, and then on the x-axis we have temperature. So what happens is within the engine, the lubricant in this case, as it gets hot, it starts to get thin. So as it gets hotter and hotter and thinner, it's more easy for those moving parts to move through the oil. So as the engine gets hotter, the viscosity of the oil goes down, it becomes more efficient, and the fuel consumption starts to go down. And that happens until a point. And that point is when the oil gets hot enough, and in this case it's at 225 Fahrenheit, it gets hot enough so that now the oil can't separate those moving parts. So now I have metal on metal contact, and guess what? That's friction and that's wear. So on the blue line, you see fuel consumption comes down until I get to the point where I get metal on metal contact, and then fuel consumption starts to get up. So I'm using more fuel. Now, if you look at the red line, something different happens. So the red line is exactly the same oil, but this time I've put some clean and light molecules into the oil to simulate what happens over the course of you using that same oil. So when you get to the point where the oil is not strong enough to keep those metal surfaces from actually touching, now clean and glide takes over, and just as before, it acts as the cushion to keep those metal surfaces from grinding. So as the oil gets hotter and hotter, now the fuel consumption continues to go down. So the difference when you get to the end, say, in this case it's 275 Fahrenheit, the difference between those two oils is now 3%. So 3% better fuel economy, less fuel consumption, they're the same thing, with Caltex Rutecron with the clean and glide molecules. And that simulates what happens with continuous use of Caltex Rutecron. So we did one other thing too. Obviously we did the lab test, we did the test of the engine in a test cell, but we also did a test with real vehicles on real roads. And this was a taxi fleet trial that we did in a taxi fleet just north of San Diego. So in this case, we took 11 vehicles. There were 5 Toyota Camrys, and these Toyota Camrys we put brand new engines into, and there were 6 Fords. And the Fords, we reconditioned the engines so that they were like new. Some of the vehicles ran on our previous formulation of Caltex Rutecron. Some of them ran with the new formulation with clean and glide technology. So we ran these vehicles for around about 50 to 60,000 kilometres. So in total, this is a 600,000 kilometre test, which if you think about it, is like driving a car to the moon and back more than once. What we found was that the vehicles with the previous formulation, as the oil started to get older, the fuel economy started to drop off very, very slowly. But the ones with clean and glide technology, that didn't happen, okay? That didn't happen. Fuel economy stayed really constant. So at the end of the 60,000 kilometres of driving each vehicle, we saw a benefit comparing the new formulation versus the old formulation of somewhere in the vicinity of 5%. So I think it's important to know that that trial was real taxis, real passengers driving their normal routes. It wasn't controlled, But what it did show is that with continual use of the same lubricants and the same fuel, Caltex with Techron, with the new formulation, was much better at protecting those vehicles and was much better at preserving fuel economy. So that's something that we're really, really proud of. In addition to that, Pete mentioned our new product, which is Caltex Platinum with Techron. We've turned gold into platinum, and the way we've done that is we've put more of the clean and glide technology into that particular product, 50% more. So what does that mean? It means that it's much, much faster acting. So we get more of those clean and glide molecules to the important parts of the engine straight away, and we get a much faster buildup of those molecules inside the crankcase so that they can go right through the heart of the engine. Okay? Continuing to help protect and improve fuel economy. So that, for me, that's a really big win. So just in summary, we like to think of this as clean, protect, save, and perform. We clean your engine to help it perform at its best. We protect your engine by having clean and glide molecules build up with continual use of your oil. We help you save by making your engine more fuel efficient, and that also helps you perform. It performs well because of now it's more efficient and because we've been able to keep that engine clean the way that it was designed to perform. So ladies and gentlemen, that is how Caltex will revolutionise your driving experience so you can enjoy the journey even more. Thank you.